Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavai, tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be full of energy. May we work together with the aim of illumination. May we not unnecessarily quarrel with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Maya Sarve Bhadrani Pushyantu Ma Kashchit Dukhabhag Bhavet. May all be prosperous and happy. May all be free from illness. May all achieve perfection in this life. May none suffer from miseries in this world. So this is Spiritual Seekers, question and answer. I suppose we're all spiritual seekers. So I'm going to begin by muting my microphone, and then you can formulate your questions.
Swamiji. How can one increase the concentration during meditation, Swamiji?
Aha. Okay. So first of all, we have to understand what is meditation. And so maybe my counter question to you is, what is meditation?
Focusing on the one thought, Swamiji, whatever you have as a thought. So for me, meditation, when I do, is focusing on the oneness.
Okay, but we have to now take into account, because probably the most succinct and useful and practical guide on meditation is to be found in that yoga which is specialized in that, dhyana yoga. That is the yoga of Patanjali, as put out in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So we can cut straight away to the methodology and see. So there are 8 limbs, as you know, and I'm sure everybody is familiar with those things. But meditation, in the sense that you have just described it, is number 7. And the whole process is actually called meditation, just to confuse us a little bit. So let us say that there is meditation as a 7th step, and the rest is constructing a runway so that we can take a flight above the clouds, and we can think of it in this way. So it is impossible for us to concentrate on anything if our life is scattered, if our energy, while we are awake, is not focused on something, is not centered on something. Now, if you are a devotee, then you'll make the whole of your life a constant round of worship. All your activities will be full of worship. You'll be offering the fruits of all your activities toward this most beloved Ishtadevata, or chosen ideal, that is the way and also the goal. If you are karma yogi, you'll be doing all activities completely mindfully. So in both things, we have concentration. One is continuously thinking or practicing the presence of the divine. Practicing the presence of the divine is a wonderful way of meditation, or of concentrating the mind. That is ekagra, making the mind one-pointed, bringing all the scattered energies that you have that fly off and bringing it into one central place. And most people are involved in some kind of activities. So when you do 2 things, when you make these activities in a way sacrificial, a kind of worship, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, when you make sure that you are mindful of all the movements. Let's take an example of it. Supposing you have to get up from where you are and walk across the room. There are several ways of doing this. One is absent-mindedly thinking of why you're crossing it or what you want to get at the end of it. Let's say you're walking toward the fridge. Then the whole activity of walking is an absent-minded activity. It is automatic. There is a different way you could have done it. You could have been aware of somebody getting up from the seat, his or her way, swinging the arms, for example, making sure that you're mindful of every step. Now, there's a wonderful movie that I may have mentioned previously. It was at a kind of art exhibition, and it shows several varieties of films of a Buddhist monk. He was an actor, actually, but he was simulating the movement of a Buddhist monk. And in the background are buses and traffic and people walking. In other words, it's contrasted to the hustle and bustle of life. And you hardly see him move. So when he's raising a leg, it's not the leg. He raises, first of all, the heel of the foot, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, and moves forward. And all the time, his eyes are closed or open. He is aware of the movement of his body. Now, there are some variations of this awareness. You can be aware that divine energy is flowing through all the muscles and nerves of the body and creating a movement. After all, we don't act, we don't move. Nature herself is moving, and she's doing it through a combination of 3 varieties or categories of activities. These we call sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are elements which comprise the whole of our existence, the whole of what we might describe as nature. And so this awareness is going on, but how many people walk across a room with a certain intention in mind and do this? Now, in the Western monastic system, or Eastern monastic system too, there's provision for cloisters. That means there's provision for monks or nuns to walk mindfully in corridors. And so giving them space to walk, space to pace up and down, maybe saying some prayers, maybe reading, but all the time keeping the divine presence. So that is the devotee's way. But if you don't believe in God or anything like that, you can still be mindful of all activities. And this mindfulness grants you efficiency. Because if you take one unit activity at a time and use this unit activity with full awareness, every activity that is contained in this 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds will be done completely efficiently because all your energy will be concentrated on this unit activity. Now, of course, it's not exactly possible to concentrate like this all the time. And the mind will have a tendency to wander here and there. But a good concentration also depends on good time management. And when people come and say, oh, I'm very stressed, I'm stressed at work and so on, let's analyze your activities and find out one of 2 factors. Are you under-resourced? Are you inefficient? And more than likely, there's maybe a combination of both. But it could be down to inefficiency. That is, you don't know what you're doing tomorrow, and you don't know what you're doing in the next hour, and you don't know what you're doing in the hour, let's say 10 o'clock tomorrow or the next week. And much of your stress goes away when you plan correctly. And then, of course, you can afford to put all your energy into this one unit activity instead of scattering it in anxiety. Anxiety is the thing that drains your energy the most because the mind can never be exhausted. But the anxiety within your localized version of it will make you feel exhausted because as you're doing the activity, you'd rather be doing something else. And your mind wanders off, perhaps to the Bahamas. I often say, you see it in terms of the human capacity to concentrate or to pay attention. See, if you're addressing a large audience, you divide them into two, and you highlight somebody who has sparkling eyes, full of enthusiasm, and you address your talk, let's say, to the left-hand side, and wait. And when that person goes off to the Bahamas, then you highlight somebody equally enthusiastic on the right side until that person is also gone, and then you turn to the left. Welcome back. Now, it is very easy for us to be attentive and to concentrate. We are all doing it. But you see, we're concentrating on the things that entertain the mind the most, that captivate the mind the most. It is very easy to sit, let us say, in a musical concert for 4 or 5 hours at a stretch and not even blink once, not even turn your attention away. So captivated are you with maybe a live performance of music. So meditation is a song of gratitude that God is here, God is now, God is love. This is the key to devotional meditation. And immediately you'll find the mind is concentrated. If feeling, visualization, imagination is all coupled together and makes a beautiful drama, and sometimes you have to artificially create it. And so you've been on the meditation workshop over 2 days, and I give you 18 mood creators. If you sit down and the mind is not in a mood to concentrate, then you play some music, or you maybe put some gongs on, or you do some chanting, or you say some prayers. But always you have to insert the understanding that you are loved unconditionally and you are loving in return. And the love comes in the form of an awareness that there is everything that you see and hear and touch and taste, everything that you experience is worthy of gratitude. It comes free. It comes in abundance. We take the sunshine and the radiation of the sun for granted. We take the moon's reflection for granted, where we see by night. Sun enables us to see by day. We take the capacity to digest food for granted, the capacity to think for granted. We take the heart's action for granted. We take our skills and talents and abilities for granted. We take the fact that we are living in a universe that is comprised in the belly, in the crucible of stars that have manufactured everything. You know, somebody once said, the universe, you see, you're such a small speck compared to the vast infinite universe. No, the universe is right where you sit, because all the atoms that make up the human body and all the atoms that make up all the organic life that we enjoy so much and call nature, all of it has come in the crucible of supernova, in the crucible of stars that has made star systems, and ultimately all the elements. And Margaret Burbage, Fred Hoyle, and a number of others were keen to understand that all of this comes within the crucible of the stars, and they proved it. Now nobody even blinks at the idea, but there was a time when it was difficult to accept. So we have to live our life in such a way that it is regularized. Another word for this is dharma. We live our life in a disciplined, concentrated, directed way, where all our attention moves as much as possible in one direction, and we have the awareness of a sporting activity going on in the mind, where old friends come up and we welcome them and we dismiss them, and other friends come, better friends. And all the time we are playing this game of guiding thought. And when we play this game of guiding thought, we're constantly practicing concentration. And so this, in the language of Patanjali, is called yama and niyam. That is, controls and observances, things that we should all do in order to clarify the mind. And a clarified mind, you often hear, I am very confused, my mind is very muddled. Well, purity of mind and clarity of mind, all this goes together, and it all comes through the art of concentration. And then we have to be aware of all the energy around us, and we have to be aware of the activity going on in the mental field. And when we sit now for dedicated meditation and go through that process, and we get nearer and nearer and nearer to our own intimate center through the use of a journeying imagination that takes us on a travelogue, on a pilgrim's way, that is life in general. And we recall all the great things that we can visualize and apply deep feeling to it. And it is not just that, but Japa is an essential part of the process too. Lovingly repeating God's name and singing God's glories leads us to that point where we are standing still and we are aware. And this awareness is awareness of something like a witness. And then there's an awareness of joy. And then we stand in our own nature. Even momentarily we'll find it. And then what we have done, we have touched the very feet of God. And we now had intimate contact with God, or our own immortal divine self. And the more we practice that, the more that leads to a position where every wave in the mind itself is gone. So we allow one giant wave to remain in the mind, that is the awareness of our own pure being. That classically is meditation, but of course, meditation is concentration sustained for a period of time. I just say 12 minutes on one subject. But it is not focusing, that is, it's not hitting something continuously over and over again, nor is it keeping the mind blank. It is not emptying the mind. These are two great, great mistakes to do with meditation. We can take it, as Joel Goldsmith takes it, it's a song of gratitude that God is here, God is now, God is love. What a beautiful, beautiful definition. So that all of our meditation practice should be starting off from any point in the universe, because every point in the universe will be a manifestation of divine glory. And there we can trace progressively, step by step, back to our own self. So the Kathopanishad, for example, will give us a step-by-step process. It will tell us that one thing gets absorbed into another thing, gets absorbed into another thing. What is the meditation process? When all the objects of the senses get absorbed in the senses themselves, get absorbed into the energy that flows through, gets absorbed in the mind, gets absorbed in the intellect, and gets absorbed in the area of bliss, and finally disappears altogether. So this is how we improve our concentration. Earlier, somebody had asked on my Saturday talk, or sometime I had mentioned that Ravana got all his powers from the cosmic mind, from Brahma, and gained the power of great concentration, and therefore got all these siddhis or powers. And yet, he was not a pure person. He was egoistic. He suffered from jealousy and greed and anger, and lust, and all of these kinds of things. Yes, but meditation doesn't guarantee you of purity of the mind. But meditation, as applied in spiritual life, is designed only to clarify and purify the mind, to settle the waves in the mind. The other kind of concentration will arouse a wave that is designed to overcome all the other waves, for good or bad, no moral judgments in it. So there are a number of ways that we can hone up our concentration. And so meditation should be a great delight for us to do, where the attention is captivated immediately with the use of our visualization, our imagination, all in glorious technicolor, all with a living guiding commentary. There's another question here. Could you please give us some information about Astavakra Gita? As a matter of fact, it is well known in French, since it has been translated many times in some different ways. It seems to me very appreciated by some people. Okay, the Astavakra Gita. Well, first of all, there's a story behind it that helps us to, or that enables us a little bit to understand what is the Astavakra Gita. So I will actually bring the Astavakra up and start a little bit of an overview of it so that we can understand. It starts off with a story which gives a background. I'll come back to that. So John asked a question. I always find that my mind wanders and I lose concentration when I'm repeating japa during my meditation. Is there some way to stop this? Yes. So how do we do japa? We do japa by first either visualizing or having a picture of our guru in front, the guru that gave us the mantra. Make a mental salutation to that and see that the guru is an open channel for divine grace to flow. That's the first thing. The second thing is, behind that is a parampara, that is a whole lineage of gurus. So that is behind that. You make your salutation to that, and then you make your salutation to your personal ideal of God, whose sound embodiment is the mantra that is repeated, and the repetition is called japa. The next thing you have to do is, in meditation, you have to understand what is the purpose of japa. The purpose of japa is to steady the mind, to clean the mind, and it has to be done with feeling. If it is not done with feeling, it'll be dull and you will fall asleep. It'll just be like the repetition of that famous mantra, Coca-Cola. So that has no meaning. So when we think of something, then by word association, immediately the image of what we're thinking, what is called nama, is a representation, a reproduction of rupa, the form of something. And if we just repeat it with no meaning and with no feeling, then it becomes dull and boring. So we have to put the maximum feeling into it, understanding it to be the audial embodiment of our chosen ideal. So this is there is a certain translation of the Astavakra Gita, which I have in front of me. It begins like this, the last word. It says, in the beginning was silence. When it broke, sound manifested. Meaning given to the sound created the world of names and forms. And we touched on this when we talked about japa. Thus begins the samsara, that is, the world as we perceive it. In this world of relative existence, a lot of efforts are put to go beyond by creating more and more words. We create words, we create sentences, we create books, we create audio things, we create visual things now in the media that we have. And although the intention is good, all of this noise stops us from our attention, steering our attention, our concentration, a subject that we have just been discussing. And so it leads to entanglement in the relative world and not freedom from all these, this bombardment of information that is coming toward us. And this creates the world of absolute chaos and subsequently getting lost in the world through words. Now, The translator says this: the Lord, out of his compassion, relieved us of this entanglement through the deluge, masterminded, which took away the cause of absolute chaos through the relative world, and so on and so forth. So it goes on. Anyway, now, how does this Astavakra Gita? Gita means a song. And so Astavakra means bent in 8 places, several places. And the author of this text is bent in several places. So the Astavakra Gita is unlike most other scriptures, because here both the teacher, which is Astavakra, and the student that it is addressed to, Janaka, these 2 people are already enlightened and they're living this knowledge. However, at some moment in the life of King Janaka, now we were talking earlier about 2 types of saints we have to highlight. One, the teacher saints, who are non-violent people, and the other are the active saints, the administrative saints, if you will. And Janaka was an administrative saint, that is, doing all the activities and more of busy people. See, when you say, how can I concentrate the mind? I'm so busy. Well, there can be nothing more busy than kings in the ancient days, because they were not only administrators, but they were also the sole authority. They were kind of dictators, although they were surrounded by advisors, no doubt. But these were benign dictatorships, since there had to be certain qualities, certain virtues that every king has. And this King Janaka is a saint, is a sage amidst all the responsibilities of kingship. And so at some moment in his life, there seems to be an urgency to know the absolute. And then it is only in this background to this text, the sage Astavakra, who helps him come across or get out of his mental blocks. And I suppose there are many stories regarding the sage Astavakra and the King Janaka. And so we can say that the Astavakra Gita itself straight away touches the topic and gives the self-knowledge, gives instructions, talks about the obstacles on the path and their corrective measures. And all point toward things like the joy of living in freedom. So the Astavakra Gita is composed in a very simple and very easy to understand style, but it's very straightforward also. And especially for those who have a little bit of knowledge of Sanskrit. So we can see that straight away it starts with the King Janaka making inquiry. So just to launch you into a little bit of it, the first question he asks, how does a person attain knowledge, and how will freedom be reached? Similarly, how can dispassion be attained? Please explain this to me. Straight away, a poignant question. A question that, no doubt, some of you also have had at some point in time. So the answer comes like this. I'm giving you a flavor of the Astavakra Gita. My dear one, he says, if you seek freedom, then leave the objects as if they are poison and cultivate forgiveness, straightforwardness, compassion, contentment, and truth. These are like ambrosia. Straight away it tells us. Now there's a similar passage, and because this has come from Charles, I'm going to refer to this. What must I do to gain eternal life? Give up all you have, take up your cross and follow me. And the man who was rich went away sad. It's not easy to leave the world off. It's not easy to sever attachment, because we have grown up with it, we have grown with it, we've gotten used to it. It represents our whole life, and we cling to it. We might even cling to things that are in the cupboard for some 6 months, and just in case we need something. And so Astavakra goes straight into the reasoning, why should you do this? He says, you are neither the earth, nor your water, or fire, or air, or space. For attaining liberation, recognize yourself to be the witnessing consciousness of all of these. This itself is a meditation. Now we think that we have eyes and ears and all these sense organs, and that is true at a certain level of understanding. But these are all crystallized manifestations of what we call tanmatras, subtle elements that sit behind, 5 in all, and 5 plus all senses of individualities that are common to every single creature. This represents 6 items if we were to lay it out in a kind of ladder, a kind of progression that goes way back to the Absolute. And it is very interesting to do that. I try to introduce it into almost every discussion and talk that we have. If you look at the universe as a series of waves emanating from a divine mind, then there's a great, great advantage to that. Because we're able to make a discernment in a very easy, natural, and also playful way. The understanding comes, let's say, for convenience sake, in 26 different categorical ways. Now we can take our own environment in our waking state, where we have 5 organs, as you know, eyes, ears, touch, taste, and so on. But we also, of course, have 5 organs of action. We have the feet, we have the hands, we have the generative organ, the organ of evacuation, and we have speech. So all of these things represent the reactive forces within us. So when we apply the interpretive faculty, whose job is to receive and also make sense of the world, this is called the mind. And all together, this makes 16 categories. But these categories are all manifestation, 16 because, of course, 5 objects are there. So 10 sense organs, 5 of incoming, 5 outgoing, the mind, and also the objects to which they're related. So this combination leads us now to an understanding that these are all manifested crystallized forms of 5 subtle waves, progressively combining, recombining, and delivering the world as we understand it, as we see it. Now, modern physics has caught up with this and says that although the world looks like particles, actually it's waves, or has wave-like behavior, and we can't pinpoint it down, but we know there are subtle forces that lie below things at the most fundamental level, and calculating how these things work and applying them and using them results in the technology that we are using here today for this broadcast. So in understanding this, we can now do a meditation and go back and say, where do these elements come from? Well, they come from this essential one mind. When somebody asked earlier on, so what about this? What about the Ravana, for example, who got all his powers through concentration and yet wasn't pure? So this is meditation. The answer is not all meditators are God-centered. They are world-centered, many of them. And many of them are destruction-centered. So meditation, that is extreme concentration to the point of one-pointedness, does not guarantee you a liberation. won't give you that result. And when we see the universe in this unfolding way as the subtle elements crystallized as the gross waking state, and when we see it coming from the one simple cosmic mind who expresses itself as form, and when we understand that it comes from a certain potentiality that we give a label on called nature, and when we resolve that too back, when we take space and time away and all these other things, when we take any characteristic away, any slight movement, when we take all that away, we have this one pure existence. And that is a witnessing consciousness. And so, therefore, if we want freedom, we surely have to understand these things and understand the process by which we can clear away all the dross. We can clear away all the jungle. You know, in certain countries, let's say the discovery of Angkor Wat resulted because people saw there was dense forest and they were clearing it. And all of a sudden they came across these magnificent buildings that were overgrown and ignored and lost for centuries. So we have to clear away all the forest of our mind, all the creepers, all the things that are in our way, that serves as obstacles. We have to use the machete, the keen instrument of discrimination. He says, if you disidentify from the body, you abide in the consciousness right away. You are bliss, peace, and liberated from all bondages. Imagine, the only thing in the way is this identification with the body. I am the body, I am so-and-so. You take that away, then you are left with bliss and peace, and you are liberated from all bondages, so to speak. So to speak, because you are never bound. And neither are you the distinctions. You're not Brahman, you're not cosmic mind, you're not the five elements, you're not all the egos and so on and so forth. You're none of these distinctive categories. And if you have made a count, you'll see 16 categories are there in our so-called regular relative world. And there's a world of change. They are all resolved back into individual identities and five subtle elements. And these are resolved back to a cosmic mind whose thought produced them. And that gets resolved back into nature. And that gets resolved back into the source, into the origin. And that origin we call Brahman, from the root Brah, something that seems to be projected infinitely. So you're not the distinctions like this of any one of these categories, nor are the different stations in life, that is the 4 stages of life. You are neither an object of sense organs. You are essentially unattached, formless, the witness of the universe. And recognizing this yourself, be happy. Now this is addressing all of us, because throughout the day, try to think how many times you may have inferred, I'm not happy, or I wish I were happy, or I wish I had this, I wish I had that. If you like to do the exercise, every time that thought comes up into your mind, you're going to put it down in a notebook and see how many times it's popped up. It says, O all-pervading self, dharma or dharma, joy and sorrows, that is virtue and vice, joys, sorrows, pleasure, pain, belong to the mind. You are neither the doer nor the enjoyer. You don't do anything. You are the witness of all the actions that take place. And yes, when you join that to these activities and say, I enjoy this, I enjoy that, no, your fundamental is not that. Knowing thus yourself, you are ever liberated. If you just know that, you will be free. Because you are the one, illuminator of everything, and ever liberated, it is your light that illumines all these other things, all these characteristics. Your bondage is that, and you are seeking the seer other than you. You are bitten by the terrible black cobra of the notion of doership. I am not the doer. This firm conviction is like the nectar. Drink it and be happy. You see, you have to have a military coup against the prophet-actor complex that we call I. I'm not the doer. I'm not doing anything. Hands move. Nature is moving them, fueled by the furnace of digestion, and that was fueled by food that was put in. But I can stand back and I can let digestion do what it's supposed to do, perform its function, and I can watch the mind if I like, and I can distance myself from the human body, just as I can do with any vehicle, such as a car. And you can assert, I am immaculate and pure consciousness. With this conviction, like the fire that burns away the forest of ignorance. See, these are all wrong nations. Remain griefless and be happy. So this is the kind of style that the Astavakra brings. It doesn't mess around. It contains complete philosophy from the start and gives us a means for applying a certain form of meditation, a formless type of meditation. And then the world of plurality is just a superimposition on this infinite blissful self, like projecting it onto a screen, like the snake on the rope, that eternal experience of being, thou art knowing thus, be happy, and so it goes on. Now these are just the opening stanzas of this Astavakra Gita. And so if you can get a copy, and I'm glad to see it is maybe translated into French, and so if it is translated into French, that's wonderful. But you can see the style and the purport of this wonderful book. Now, of course, there's a story about around the sage Astavakra that probably won't have time to tell in any great depth. But Astavakra was cursed because of various things, and the curse was as a result of certain pride, and that pride, or the person who had it, had to regret it and come back again, or the actions, the results of the actions came back with a kind of vengeance to him. So anyway, we can leave that story for another time if you like. So any other questions? I'm looking here in the text. Yes. Okay, I think I answered those questions. John, are you satisfied?
Oh, yes, Swamiji.
Now,
something there that...
imagine when you're feeding your dog, okay?
Yes.
Is the dog concentrated?
No.
No, no. The dog doesn't salivate when you prepare the food?
Oh, only when it's treats.
Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. You see, we have no difficulty. No being has any difficulty in concentrating and rallying all the sense organs when it's something that we enjoy. And that is why there's a big industry in entertainment, keeping the mind delightfully occupied. So meditation should also be a delightful occupation, as is your whole life, your whole day, because the subject matter doesn't change. Subject matter is exactly the same during your working, waking life as it is when you sit down for formal meditation. Your whole life is one continuous song, one continuous meditative exercise. The only difference is in your waking life, it is with eyes open, and when you're sitting in a dedicated way, it is with eyes closed. And as soon as you catch the mind becoming dull and unenthusiastic, then stop, catch it, and then reintroduce something that is more pleasing. Now, some other ways. Yeah, sorry?
It was in the repetition of Japa that
yes,
it's something that was happening all the time.
Yes, yes.
And
But you see, there are two uses of it. One is almost an unconscious activity where you're repeating it continuously throughout the day. And the object of it is to keep the presence of God with you. But of course, it relies on your Ishtadevata, your chosen ideal being, literally your most beloved. Let's put it in the human relationship context. Supposing you're a young man, well, just a few years younger than yourself probably, and you fall in love madly with somebody, then during the day you have to go separate ways and work. Will you not be unconsciously repeating that person's name all the time? Every time you think of the person, their name will come, and every time the name will come, you'll think of the person. It doesn't have to be a person, it can be a dog as well, an animal. So you see, you can't divorce words and concepts. They go together. And as soon as you repeat the word with the meaning, you're bringing the presence of the divine right here, right now, with you as you walk, as you work, as you talk. So that is the one use of the japa. It is the exercising of a protecting field generated by the protecting thought called a mantra. The other use is, as I described it, sitting down. And the use of this japa then is to steady the mind and invite your chosen ideal into your heart. And for that reason, you sit down and you contemplate them. And then when you repeat the mantra, you're hearing the subtle vibration that is the highly vibrational representation, not just representation, but the vibration itself, which is your chosen ideal, coming out suitable for your own ear to listen and your own speech to replicate the sound, to use the sound. So in the day, it doesn't matter. You don't have to apply your concentration to it, by the way. Just simply repeating it is enough. But of course, mantras have meanings. You see, if I say John Cunningham, and I say before every single vowel and before every single consonant, I pause to think of John Cunningham, then the whole process of communication will come to a grinding halt. And it's not necessary, because the mind works very much quicker than this. And so when I say a person's name, immediately the person comes before me. That's the idea. A friend asked, if we are sent here to experience, what's wrong in going through life experiencing pleasure and pain without complaints and finish off the journey? What more is needed and why a purpose? Is experiencing not the only purpose? Let me see if I can understand this question. Okay, so a friend asked, okay, fine. If we are sent here to experience, well, let's just analyze that first statement. I don't think we are sent anywhere. We're not messengers. We are expressions. We are manifestations of one eternal, substantial essence. So, of course, in the beginning, we can think in a kind of crude way, yes, we are sent here for a purpose. It's not that we are sent. It's a bit like saying, why is it that a rose flower can be structured like a rose flower and can be pink, whereas another flower comes up at a different season, has a slightly different structure, and is yellow? Why? What is it sent to do? It's not sent to do anything. It's an expression. It's a manifestation. And then what's wrong in going through life experiencing pleasure and pain, there's nothing wrong in it, without complaints, and finish off the journey. Well, yes, fine. If you can cultivate the art of experiencing life in all its vicissitudes and virtues, in all its ups and downs, with an even-mindedness, that is fine. But this is a very rare thing to cultivate. And if you have cultivated this, then you're on the way. Your journey has started. It's more than started. Just to remind you how the journey looks. You start by acknowledging and knowing what is the truth. Having absolute faith in that. Not looking elsewhere for it. You're quite decided what is what. And then the next step will be not being affected by any pairs of opposites, having an equilibrium of mind. Now, how easy is it to take yourself from this world and view it and accept it with all its ups and downs in a philosophical way and an emotionally balanced way? Or will you necessarily want to avoid pain? You take a survey of people living and you say, are you afraid of dying? Many people say, no, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of the pain that might be associated with it. And that would be perfectly true for many, many people. So we do have a strategy where we avoid pain. As long as we feel embodied, we will have this back and forth. We'll try to avoid something painful and we'll move towards something that is pleasurable. And we won't complain if we are able to cultivate this titiksha, or forbearance and concentration. So yes, we should finish the journey off, no doubt. What is the definition of concentration? It's a sense of the absence of time. If you're concentrated, you won't know what happened. It'll all pass very, very quickly. Before you know it, it's done. We often say, I didn't know where the time went. It just flashed by. See, all of a sudden I found it was all over because your mind was fully occupied. Your attention was fully engaged. So what more is needed, and why a purpose? Well, because we have the central purpose of experiencing our own freedom. And as long as we feel embodied, we don't have that. And yet there is a pushing from inside and a pulling from the outside. Both are happening. And it's a wonderful arrangement. And this is called evolution or unfolding. This is called growth. And then we have a local purpose, because within the grand scheme of things, there are individual skills and talents that enable us to climb the ladder. And so that is why it's necessary. Why a purpose? Is experiencing not the only purpose. Well, it's like climbing a mountain. What is the purpose? Is it the experience of the climbing? Yes. And is there an ultimate goal? Yes, we want to get to the top, but it's perfectly true. If we pay so much obsessive attention on the top, we might fall down into a chasm on the way. So it's much better to enjoy the flora and fauna of the journey itself, as long as we see that the goal at the top and the flora and fauna at the bottom are not different or separate. They're the same. One is a manifested version of the other. One is name and form, and the other is substance. So I don't know if that's the meaning of your question, but I hope I've answered it. And then I hope you can give that answer to your friend. And then I hope that you can say, well, why don't you ask the Swami directly? And then that person can come on to these channels.
Thank you, Swamiji. I'll do that.
Oh, good. All right, so we'll finish off. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good, thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you,
Very
Swami.
understand.
Thank
Thank
you very
you,
much.
Swamiji.
Swamiji.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Swamiji.
Swamiji.